From the time we're young, we're taught to view the human body like a mechanical engine. And according to that logic, as the years pass, the engine wears out, the parts rust, and the whole system inevitably grinds down. When something finally does break, we go to the doctor, get a diagnosis, and accept a new label. We become old, we become frail, or chronically ill, and almost immediately we surrender our autonomy to those words, trusting the medical establishment to tell us exactly what our limits are. But medical science relies entirely on probabilities. A diagnosis tells you what happens to most people with a certain set of symptoms. It doesn't tell you what is guaranteed to happen to you. This chart shows how statistical averages work, grouping everyone into a massive, predictable bell curve. But if you pull one data point out, that dot represents a unique biological system with its own genetics and environment. None of us is actually the average. When we unquestioningly accept an incurable diagnosis, or agree that we're simply too old to do certain physical activities, we stop trying. We adjust our lives to fit the label, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where our physical decline perfectly matches our expectations. In 1979, a Harvard psychologist named Ellen Langer began to question the rigid boundaries we draw between the mind and the body. She realized that while biology certainly plays a role in aging and illness, the actual barrier keeping us from physical capabilities might be our mindset. We hold on to deeply fixed ideas about what we can and cannot do as we get older. She posed a bizarre question. If you could place someone in an environment that successfully tricked their mind into believing it was 20 years earlier, would their physical body actually reflect that reversal in time? Testing this meant going far beyond a standard laboratory setup. She needed an environment that would completely isolate her subjects from the modern world, forcing them to entirely shed their present-day identities. Langer selected 8 men in their late 70s and early 80s. They were frail, struggling with arthritis and poor vision, and relied heavily on their adult children to manage their daily lives. They said goodbye to their families, left behind all their modern comforts, and boarded a bus that would take them into total isolation. Their destination was an old monastery in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Langer's team meticulously retrofitted the entire retreat to be a perfect physical replica of the year 1959. There was one strict rule for the week. The men were forbidden from reminiscing about the past. They had to speak, act, and exist entirely in the present tense of 1959. To enforce the illusion, the environment was flooded with era-specific cultural triggers. They spent their evenings watching black and white television broadcasts and listened to Nat King Cole and Rosemary Clooney on the radio. Their daily discussions revolved around Fidel Castro's recent advance into Havana, the launch of the Explorer 1 satellite, and the latest episode of Ed Sullivan. Surrounded by these cues and treated as independent adults, the men's brains were relentlessly anchored in the past. They had no choice but to discard the identity of frail old men. The intervention began the moment they arrived. When the bus parked, the men looked around for bellboys to carry their heavy suitcases to their rooms. Langer intentionally provided none. Instead, she introduced a concept we can call reverse Zeno strategy. If a man couldn't carry his suitcase all the way down the hall, she instructed him to carry it just a few feet. If that was too hard, carry it a few inches, or unpack it right there and carry the contents one shirt at a time. Every single man managed to get his own luggage to his room, and after just 1 week, the physiological tests recorded significant results. The men showed improved joint flexibility, increased grip strength, better vision, and independent observers judged their faces to look visibly younger. By stepping out of the passive patient role and being forced to act independently, the men demonstrated that shifting their mindset and behavioral expectations could measurably improve their physical function. Most of us treat a medical diagnosis like a final verdict. In Langer's framework, these labels are just starting points, a single perspective on a body that is constantly changing. This diagram shows the core loophole: variability. We view chronic conditions as a flat line of pain, but symptoms constantly fluctuate. With asthma, accepting shortness of breath as permanent misses the nuances. You must track when you are breathing easy. Mapping these micro-fluctuations allows you to pinpoint specific environmental triggers, like a stressful conversation, a specific room, or a certain time of day. It provides a tangible roadmap for gaining control over a condition you thought was entirely out of your hands. Actively noticing this variability shatters the illusion of stability. It rescues us from learned helplessness by revealing small, actionable pockets of control we previously ignored. The medical establishment relies heavily on statistical probabilities, what is likely to happen to the group. But as individuals, our psychological need is to explore possibilities, what we are uniquely capable of achieving. There is a massive empirical loophole in medical science. If just one person can improve or reverse a condition that is widely considered impossible to cure, it proves that the disease is indeterminate, not inherently uncontrollable. This requires us to become health learners. We can partner with doctors and leverage their expertise, but we have to remain the ultimate observers and guardians of our own specific bodily data. True health requires acknowledging the inherent uncertainty of medicine. When we refuse to be defined by a label, we shift the relationship between our mindset and our biology, creating the space for physical improvement where we once only saw decline.